You may have noticed that I was originally down to speak after the current Health Secretary, but the timetable has been changed by the former Health Secretary and subjected to a massive top-down reorganisation that nobody was warned about. That's a gag, by the way. Now, I'm a bit nervous today because I've got some very old friends in the audience who haven't seen me for a while, and they didn't know that I've recently joined Generation Active after a 30-year love affair with beer and curries. And so for those that are here, they've seen that I've changed a lot lately. In fact, I keep reading in the newspapers that I'm a diminished figure. And it's true. I'm not quite half the man I used to be, but I'm getting there. And I'm pretty certain that that's the reason UK Active invited me today, because I consider myself the perfect poster boy to get an aging population exercising again. Now, there are a few things that spurred me on to losing weight and getting healthy. One was studying the history of the Labour Party, a fascinating subject for everyone. I turned 50 in 2017, and when you turn 50, it allows you to reflect on the life you've led, what you've achieved, and what you want to achieve in the future. And one of the things I want to do in the future is to keep living. And I started reading about some prominent Labour figures of the past who died in their 50s. John Smith and Hugh Gateskill, who might both have been Prime Minister. Robin Cook, who I believe would have been one of the most significant political figures of the last decade in politics, had he lived. And I realised something. One of the most important ingredients for political success is quite simply staying alive. Now, people often tell me I'm a political survivor, but you can't be a political survivor unless you survive physically. After 32 years as an MP and in his 60s, Jeremy Corbyn found himself and his ideas perfectly placed to take over the Labour Party, something that might never have happened had he not been a teetotal drinker, changed his exercise habits with regular cycling and jogging. Now, I freely admit that whilst I'm younger than Jeremy Corbyn, I'm a less impressive physical specimen. So I did something that Andrew's old boss and political hero Norman Tebbit once advised. I got on my bike, regular cycling, walking 10,000 steps a day, climbing the steps to my office instead of taking the lift, boxing, regular cardio and weightlifting at the gym. And I've used a rudimentary form of David Cameron's nudge theory. Every time I reach a weight loss goal, I buy a new piece of kit for my bike. And since last summer, because of that, I've lost 99 pounds in weight. Thank you. The pounds have flown off me almost as quickly as they've flown off local government public health budgets. But there's another personal reason why I've realised I had to take action with my own health. I was diagnosed a few years back with type 2 diabetes. I'm not unusual. There are 3.7 million adults in the UK with diabetes, 90% of them with type 2, which is more than twice as many as there were 20 years ago. And that increase in numbers, as Tanny alluded to, has a big impact on the NHS budget. The most recent figure alone is 10 billion. But if we carry on as we are, the NHS estimates that by 2036, the cost of type 2 diabetes will be 32 billion. The human cost is terrible. I don't need to tell an informed audience like this that diabetes can lead to blindness, strokes, heart attacks, and even dementia. It's shocking that as a country, we are amputating 120 feet and toes a week as a result of diabetes-related conditions. And one of the reasons for the increase in type 2 diabetes is the overweight and obesity epidemic, the reasons for which Ukactive identifies in its reports today: a national culture of sedentary working, poor levels of physical activity. But I think there's absolutely one vital ingredient to this too: sugar. For decades, our public health education has focused very strongly on the importance of cutting down our fat consumption. For decades, it's been easier and easier to have a low-fat diet. We've had more low-fat ingredients and processed meals available to us than ever before. And yet, for decades, we've been getting more and more overweight. And over the same period, we're eating vast quantities of sugar. 4 to 10-year-olds are estimated to eat the equivalent of 5,500 cubes of sugar per year, about 3.5 stone, or 22 kilograms to my kids, the weight of a 3-year-old in sugar. Sugar is in places it doesn't need to be: cereals, milk products, crisps, yogurt. It's in places parents don't expect it to be. So I don't blame parents for being confused. But one of the consequences of that is that 1/3 of children are either overweight or obese when they leave primary school. 1/3 of children overweight or obese. Now, I'm pleased and very, very relieved to say that thanks to a quite radical change of diet and behaviour, not just exercising more, but eradicating ultra-processed food, fast food, starchy carbs and refined sugar pretty much entirely, my own type 2 diabetes is in remission. I'm no longer taking medication for it, and I feel absolutely fantastic. And what I know now that I didn't know when I was first diagnosed is that type 2 diabetes can be prevented, but I'm living proof that it can also be put into remission. And that's my central message today. It's that we have to get better as a country at doing both prevention and remission. Yet too many people today have no clue that their condition can be beaten. And I'd like to send a simple message to all the other fellow type 2 diabetic sufferers, all 3 million of them. I believe in remission for all. Remission for all. The vast majority of those people with type 2 diabetes can get off their medication with the right combination of nutrition and exercise. And that's the task for all of us in this room. And if they do, they will live longer and have more fulfilling lives. Remission for all is a national necessity, because sitting behind those 3.2 million type 2 diabetics are 1 million undiagnosed type 2 diabetics. And sitting behind them are 12.3 million more people at risk of type 2 diabetes. As a country, as families and communities, we can't afford the financial cost or the personal cost of that kind of increase. That's why today I'm announcing Labour's ambition to halt the rise of diabetes within a single parliamentary term, once and if we're in government. That's a shared ambition between me as deputy leader of our party and responsible for sports policy, and Jonathan Ashworth and the Shadow Health team. And when I begin to drill down in this policy area, I see on too many measures, as a country, we're moving in the wrong direction, unwilling or unable to make the right long-term choices on public health, and making it more difficult for people to get active. Local authority spending on sport and recreation has been cut by 300 million since 2011. I know you all know this. Participation in sport by young people inside and outside of school is down, especially for 5 to 10-year-olds who should be in our target age range. We need to do much more, much better. And I want to examine how sport and activity can be allied with the correct nutritional advice to reverse the terrible cost of these preventable and treatable diseases that threaten to sink our NHS and shorten our lives. So we're going to invite a broad range of independent experts to help us answer a simple but challenging question. What would we have to do to halt the rise of type 2 diabetes within 5 years? I don't know the answer yet, but I've got some ideas. Some things the Independent Commission will look at will be, how do we extend social prescribing, where we offer activity and sport over pills and medicine in the first instance? Is one-size-fits-all public health advice on nutrition right? Should we be aiming for greater personalisation of advice? How can nutritionists and GP play a bigger role in helping people achieve better diets and move seamlessly into greater exercise? How can food labelling, packaging, serving information be made clearer and more understandable for people trying to understand their own health conditions? And I'm not afraid to look at regulatory failure and whether we should extend measures like the sugar tax to those foodstuffs that have little or no nutritional value. I don't have all the answers, as I said, and that's why I'm kicking off this process today. I've learned so much from my own experience that I want to look at the territory in more depth and understand how that revolution in health diagnostics and tech can help others. From blood glucose monitors, like the PM wears, which give much more accurate reading than a finger prick test, to new means of measuring blood pressure, blood ketones, your daily steps, and all your body metrics that help you on your exercise journey. But I believe that this is only achievable if it's led from the top. Something that we recognise as one of the biggest challenges facing this country and prioritise accordingly. Something that we would expect to be accountable were we to be in government. And I also believe that this just can't be done if it's just relying on the NHS to sort it. It can't just be about treatment or even diagnosis. And nor can it be just about blaming people for being overweight or about saying the answer is in their hands alone. It's not all simply about obesity. Thin people can have type 2 diabetes too. We have to address the roles played by food manufacturers, retailers, advertisers, GPs, nutritionists, teachers, parents, as well as the fitness industry. If people are active, are getting the exercise they need, that combined with good nutrition will bring all sorts of benefits to their well-being, to their fitness, to their strength, to their social lives, their mental health, then it will help them prevent or manage diabetes too. We must make sure it's as easy as possible for people to take part in sport, to walk or cycle to work, to use their local swimming pool, to join a sports team or a dance class or to volunteer. That's not just about health policy or DCMS policy, it's about transport policy and planning and local government and keeping our streets safe. We need to embed these practices in the next generation as far as is practically possible. So I welcome Generation Inactive. The report that you launched today has clear, practical steps about how we can start this transformation. We absolutely do need clear advice to children and parents in schools from public health bodies and a renewed emphasis on nutrition and physical activity in schools as part of a pupil's day-to-day education. We also need to better use technology and data to engage the next generation and plan for the future. I hope we're able to use these ideas and your expertise as part of our national strategy going forward. In particular, it's the middle-aged and older generation who are battling obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and other conditions that can benefit from the work you do. Your Reimagining Aging report today, which seeks to embed physical activity for an older generation throughout the NHS care, hits the nail on the head. Getting the nation more active, more often, should be a mission of government. And I want my party to have policies that will make it as easy as possible for people of all ages and abilities, in all parts of the country, from all backgrounds, to take part in physical activity at a level that suits them. I believe Ukactive and its member organisations have a huge role to play in that and in helping us fight the twin harms of obesity and type 2 diabetes that I've talked about today. I think they represent the biggest health emergency facing the nation. All of you in this room are part of that battle to find a solution. You should be very proud of the work that you do, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the years ahead. Thank you.